visionary owns the definition of the culture and what you expect it to be, but someone else in the organization needs to be the one who is actually accountable for, measuring culture and driving the systems in place that's honoring the individual so you can get to alignment to it. The EOS, what we call it, the integrator, it might be the president, it might be the COO. Typically not the HR person. They don't have enough power or accountability, right. Where COO, president, integrator is in charge of profit, just like they should be in charge of measurable organizational health.
Hey, I'm Armando Leduc, producer, film actor, and owner of Leduc Entertainment. I've chosen a life off the beaten path and wanted to find others that are doing the same. Spaghetti on the Wall is a show based on all of the years that I've thrown spaghetti on the wall and nurtured what stuck. We will share fun stories, ideas, tips, tricks, and more. Welcome to Spaghetti on the Wall. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on when you are consuming this podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, back with another Spaghetti on the Wall with Uncle Walt Brown. What's up, Uncle Walt? How are you?
Doing great. Wonderful to be here.
It's good to have you.
Really am. Fired to be here, frankly.
Yeah, same. I came across you at the Visionary Summit that I'm a member of, and you did this talk, and I was like, man, this is something that I really want to implement for my business and my team, and just for the culture. And so we're going to get into how all of this stuff works, right? I want to talk about organizational terrorists, right? I think that's a really good hook, and what does that mean? So take it away on that. Who are organizational terrorists?
Well, a lot of times they don't even know that they're organizational terrorists. And you can measure them. There's somewhere along there where there's something that's not really fitting. They aren't real happy, like with their life at work, and they end up getting fearful, and that fear turns into like bad behavior. Like what Yoda says. Yoda says, with fear comes anger. With anger comes hatred. And with much hatred comes much suffering. And so a lot of times they're actually hating themselves at work. So they're acting out. They're holding people hostage. They're not, they're just doing all sorts of weird work where, an organizational terrorist is kind of like pornography. You know it when you see them, but you don't know exactly how many maybe you have. So recognizing them, and then nobody started a company and dreamed about surrounding themselves with a bunch of hostage takers and terrorists, right? So
yeah, and we talked about this at the summit too, that these visionaries are going super fast, and a lot of these guys are D personality types, quick starts. They're just high level 30,000 foot view type people. Right. And they're not necessarily in the day to day. They don't really understand, but they can see that maybe the business is sluggish. Yeah. Maybe in different parts of the company, things are not necessarily working the right way, and it's just not, and they don't maybe know why. Right. And that's where you come in.
Yeah, exactly. So what we're able to do is the whole idea of what gets measured gets done, or you got to inspect what you expect, and we have a methodology to be able to measure like your organizational health, your psychological safety, your culture, and recognize what percentage of your folks might be over there in that sort of negative world, and then link that to the tools of your operating system like EOS to try to engage these people to bring them over to positivity. What's weird is that a lot of times your organizational terrorists were your most bought in employees, and just something has triggered them and they've moved over to terrorism. We have the ability to pull them back because they care.
Have you thought about doing this for like marriage? Yeah. I say it jokingly, but also like truly, like, I mean, how many, how many of us, are in marriages that are just, we're just kind of operating.
Well, and right? So you're in a marriage, and you spend most of your time at work. So let me lay out the foundation, and we can dig into it. So the discovery over time is just there's 7 critical needs that need to be met, that individuals at work need to have met, and be basically living in a positive alignment to the 7 critical needs. And you as an organization, you have to first define what the 7 critical needs are. So in a marriage, let's define what they are. So do we know what it means to belong? Like core values and the way we treat each other and the skills that we bring to the game. Do we belong? And then do we believe in the same thing? Is there a belief? Is there an alignment to where we're going, the strategy, and what the products or what our marriage is all about? Is it clear with what each of us are accountable for? Is it clear how we're being measured? What are we doing? Do we kind of keep score? People like to understand what they're accountable for, how they're measured, that it belongs to as it ties to belief. Do you understand how we communicate and how we can be heard? Do you understand how we can be developed and be in charge of our own development? And then ultimately, is it balanced? Do you feel like you're balanced? From a work standpoint, it's money, work life, and health. From a marriage, is it fair? So it's funny you went down that path, but that's not the goal. But certainly, you're in a relationship with your work. You're marrying your work, and you're going to be unhappy if you can't say that you belong or believe or clear what you're accountable for, or understand how you're measured, or understand how you can be heard and developed and balanced. So those are the 7 triggers, 7 critical needs. And if you have any negativity in any of those, then you're looking at a flight risk or a divorce or possibly a terrorist. That's the model that we work on and that we measure.
I've had employees in the past where I'm just so caught up in it the day to day that like after this, I don't want to call them bad apples, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because like they're on their own journey, but they weren't good for us, right?
Yeah.
And when they leave, it's just like, holy shit, the energy shifted,
Yep.
right? Wow, this person brought so much chaos, to the company, and we didn't even
Yep.
we weren't even aware of it, and I think it's super important to have tools like the one that you're offering in a way where it makes sense,
Yep.
right? And to this point, I don't think anybody has really thought about that. They talk about that, right? Like entrepreneurs talk about like culture and things like that, but
Yep.
there hasn't really been something out there that can truly like measure it
Right.
to in the way that you guys do it. So talk about this methodology a little bit on how you guys do measure this.
Well, it's super simple. So going back into it's kind of a net promoter score type idea where we have positive and we have negative, and there are negatives that offset the positives that end up with this index that we call a BITE index: buying, inclusion, trust, and engagement. And a number around 62 is normal, and 80 is pretty good. And there's great correlation with when you get your BITE index, which is a measure of your organizational health, up around that 80 number. What follows are amazing financial results. And so people might be starting to think, oh, engagement program, yes, engagement program, trust building program, yes, in trust building program, psychological safety, yes. And there's lots of thoughts around that, and everybody's engaged, like, yeah, that's it. But when you can measure something, the reason why those types of programs fail is a couple reasons. Is one, employees are seen as being done to them as opposed to for them. Really important to flip the script. And when you really kind of think about it, visionaries, entrepreneurs started companies with this dream, and they made a promise to themselves: I'm going to create this amazing place I always wanted to work. And they kind of hold it together around 20 employees, and then at that point they get just out of it. So somehow we need to have a way to pick that dream back up and turn these into promises. But the program needs to be made and communicated as for our employees and not to them. And the way we do that is we have to keep it super simple. One of the big traps is people make all the surveys too often, and it's always moving around. We're keeping it clear with 7 simple questions. And then you have to be able to respond to the feedback you get. And what we're lucky with nowadays, there are a lot of like business operating systems out there: EOS, Scaling Up, Pinnacle, all these different systems. And you can actually, what's cool is through the tools of your operating system, you should be able to respond to the 7 critical needs. And if there's gaps in there, then maybe you need to add some tools. So it's a double edged. You're measuring not only your organizational health, but you're measuring the ability of your operating system to make like 7 promises to meet the critical needs and keep them. Does that make any sense? And so it's cool.
No, yeah, it absolutely makes sense.
So these things have to go back and forth, and we have to keep it as simple as possible and direct as possible, and return them into promises.
And you're looking at, and we're talking organizations that like have 100, well, not necessarily 100, like they could be 20 people, they could be 500 people.
The largest one we've done is around 22,000. But
22,000. Well, there you go.
Yeah, and then back to the days of a lot of the work with the whole methodology is for for the company to get ahead of the head of the critical needs and define what their definition of like positive alignment looks like, and then you start attracting people through these 7 promises that meet the critical needs, and you measure. So it never gets so starting with 7 is great. About 7 or 14 is where typically organizations start to split a little bit. You can go into mini tribes, but there's nothing too small and there's nothing too large. It's this. It works in all sizes.
And you've seen talk to me about the epiphany as to how you came up with this and why, that
Two
process.
epiphanies. Okay, so people might know I'm a EOS implementer. So I'm the third. Have taken like 200 clients through it around 1,400 days, and about it, client number 80 was back when everybody was complaining about millennials. So maybe 2014, 15. I can't remember the time. And I scratched my head and said, I don't see that going on in the organizations that we're working with. As a matter of fact, our millennials are seem to be ready to take over the world. They're destroying all the stereotypes. So I asked my clients for permission to do like focus groups, the millennials in their companies. And basically what came out were these 7 critical needs, that need to be met in order for them to be happy at work and not be a flight risk. And then we just started testing it, and then there's that deeper story. You've heard the Deborah story before that turned from sort of the 7 questions, 7 promises into the bite 7. You let me know if you want me to tell you that story or
Yes,
not.
please.
Okay, so this was the second dive in. This was like the God moment that happened. It happened like 2 years ago. A rewrite of an earlier book. Ben Bella has picked it up. It's called Attract to Repel. And I go into and doing this operating system implementation, and I'm in a really large United Way. They're placing like $70 million a year, which is a big United Way. And I'm there with the leadership team. The leadership team is made up of a white female who's been executive director for like 27 years, about 6 or 7 other like white males, white females, and a black lady, middle aged, been there like 17 years, and she is director of administration. So we got the setup there. And one of the things I do is in the early period of the day, like on hour number 2 of a 8-hour day, is we're going through and we're trying to get really clear role clarity. So what are your seats and what are your roles? And we run this facilitation called the Flower Power. So this lady, the middle-aged black lady who was director of administration, we started with her. Well, she was like a third person. We started with her, and what you do, you say, okay, Deb, we're going to focus on you. Everybody think about Deborah. And we go into a whiteboard and we draw a circle and we put Deb in the center of it. And we ask the people, okay, everybody focus on what Deb, including you, Deb, focus on what Deb is doing or should be doing, or what Deb is thinking or should be thinking every second, every minute, every hour, every day, every week. You get the gist. You give them 2 minutes. They normally come with like 10 items a piece. And then we do a real-time sort on the board. So here's Deborah, and you go to Deborah first and say, okay, Deborah, what do you have? And Deborah says, why am I here? And I go to the whiteboard and I write, why am I here? And then I go to John. John, what do you have for Deborah? And he says something. And you're just basically doing this real-time sort on the board. And you come back around to Deborah and say, okay, Deborah, what do you have next? And she says, am I the token? And you're facilitating, and you're like, well, I guess that goes right here, right below. Why am I here? Am I the token? And I don't, time at that point. But anytime something like that happens, time just stops. You really don't know exactly what happened. But what I remember is just going, boom. Of course, the whole room is like, ugh! Grenade dropped in, and this voice just came into my head, and I was like, that is so unfair to you, Deborah, for you to be living here for 17 years, not knowing why you're here and whether you are the token. And what we are doing through this work is we're going to make sure that no one ever is suffering through those questions that you currently have. We're going to determine what it means to belong and believe. You're going to be clear on what you're accountable for. You're going to be clear on how you're measured, how you're heard, how you're developed, and how you're balanced. We're going to have high levels of buy-in, inclusion, trust, and engagement. And that's kind of what I forget remembering, but it was just this sort of call of, we've got this model and this tools where we can actually level the playing field and get rid of all that fear and uncertainty that's in the hearts and minds of people. They can't bring their full self to work. So that's where BITE came from. Buying, inclusion, trust, and engagement. And then it was like, okay, we got to make this thing hard and tough and actionable. And that was the rewrite of the book. That's now I'm talking to you. So, pretty passionate about
Look,
it,
I love it. You know, how many times do you see business owners and CEOs just complaining about their employees, right?
Yeah.
And every time I see it on Facebook, I'm like, it's not their fault. It's your fault.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
It's your
Yeah.
fault.
But
Because they may, you're, how, as a visionary, right?
Yeah.
I'm super 30,000 foot view. I get an idea and I'm like, get it done.
Yeah.
And I delegate and I'm like, I don't delegate properly.
Never.
Then I get frustrated because they didn't do it. There were no expectations set. There was no training.
Right.
There was, me expecting them to pick up a half-baked idea, right? And in my brain, at the end, I see it, right?
Yeah.
And then it doesn't happen, or they miss the deadline, or the thing that they put out is just not even close to how I envisioned it.
Right.
And then I am upset, right, as an idiot that they didn't get it done properly, right? And then what happens? I get upset. They feel like they did something wrong.
Yeah.
Now I've created a situation where they are now scared to even say anything, right?
Yeah.
And now they start going down the rabbit hole, right? And then their work is affected. Now I'm getting even more. Maybe I've forgotten about it, right? They'll never forget about it, right? They will never forget about it. I've forgotten about it because I'm already on to like idea number 88, And so what happens at that point, the employee continues to go down and shrink, right? They're no longer living to their superpower, right? Because they think there's something wrong with them. And then I got to let them go. And then I'm over here on Facebook going, I'm continuing to hire idiots.
And that takes it back. You go to a Vistage meeting or a TAB meeting or whatever meeting, and people complaining about their folks. And it's like, well, that's on you, dude. There is a way for you to work on this. And you got to make it systematic. And you kind of went down this funny path of they weren't clear what they were accountable for. They weren't clear how they aligned to where the vision is. You just had this vision and you shouted it out there. That's kind of the need for. Remember the big conversation we had in the room at the Visionary Summit around who owns culture? Do you remember that?
Right.
Well, and then it kind of came down to the visionary owns the definition of the culture and what you expect it to be, but someone else in the organization needs to be the one who is actually accountable for, measuring culture and driving the systems in place that's honoring the individual so you can get to alignment to it. The EOS, what we call it, the integrator, it might be the president, it might be the COO. Typically not the HR person. They don't have enough power or accountability, where COO, president, integrator is in charge of profit, just like they should be in charge of measurable organizational health.
Do you see, when you're doing this, are you seeing that maybe some of the leadership teams are like, they might be the issue because like maybe they're too power hungry, maybe they're, abusing, the people below them? And how are you navigating that?
Well, normally it's because they don't buy into the core values, or they don't really believe in where the organization's going, or they want some different level of accountability. Right. And so it's so there's a great term, I guess it came from Gino, whoever it came from, but as the leadership team goes, so goes the rest of the organization. And so when we're working with a team, typically 80% of the time in like an 8-person team, there are 1 or 2 people who will not be there in 9 months because they don't fit. And part of this is not pushing them out, but honoring our individuals with, what are we asking? What does it mean to belong here? What are our core values? What are we asking you to believe in? This is what you're accountable for. Do you understand and embrace that? This is how you're measured, heard, developed. All the 7 questions, and really we're honoring them. Then very often the people self-select out because I can't you're asking me to make promises to people as a leader. It's the power of a promise is a really important thing. You know, when you give somebody a promise, you're inferring rights to them. Armando,
Mhm.
I'm going to give you a ride downtown. I've just made your promise, and you expect me to live into that. Simple example. But you know what they find is that they're being asked as leaders to make and keep promises that they don't believe in making and keeping. They got to go.
Interesting.
You know.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you how are you using this in the are you able to use this in the hiring process?
Oh, it's yes, in that not really from a let me ask you some questions and you tell me what you think. I think everybody's a liar in an interview. Sorry, but it's what we're doing is the way we flip it for interviewing is we say let me tell you about this organization we're building, and this organization is based on 7 things that we're turning into a promise. And everybody we
Hmm.
bring into, bringing to this organization, we're making this promise and we're going to keep this promise. Every day, we're going to surround you with people who belong and know that they belong. They're going to live into the core values and have the skills. We're going to surround you with people who believe in where we're going and are really passionate about what we're passionate about. We're going to surround you with people who are accountable and responsible, know where their swim lanes are. They're really working together as a team, but they're working together because there's so much clarity. They're buying into how they contribute because they know how they're measured. They're really active in open and honest conversations in the way the organization listens. They're constantly developing themselves and taking advantage of the development opportunities we have. And the last thing is they're balanced. They're living within their ways and means. They understand the work life that balance that we're expecting, and they're healthy. So they're usually leaving most of the drama at home. We're going to make these promises to you, and the promises we're going to surround you with others who have these 7 questions, who are answering these 7 things. And if you can live within these 7 things, and we describe what they are, then please come. But if you can't, please don't come here because
Yeah.
we're going to scorch you out. It's going to be hell on earth.
Um,
It'll be either Nirvana or hell on earth, and that's how we use it. You know, that scares people or it attracts
yeah.
them. It either repels them, like, oh man, no, but you're freaks. I'm not going in there. We're like, hell yeah, don't come.
Yeah.
Then you measure twice a year and respond twice a year and show them that you're actually working to keep the promises.
Yep. I'll tell you how I used your system this week.
Cool.
Not internally, but externally, because I let a client go
Yeah.
this week.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And I was, kind of looking at your system and, just kind of going through, and I was like, man, this guy is not in alignment. Right. And it's
Yeah.
not a bad guy. It just wasn't working out. And I didn't have measurables. And I remembered your process, and I was like, he's having an effect on my employees.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
And I was like, and so I can't have that, because now he's a terrorist to my organization from an external
Yeah.
aspect. And if I don't let him go,
Right.
what's happening is I'm letting my team down,
Yeah.
right? With the promise of, this is our core values, this is what we're trying to accomplish, and this client is not part of that.
Yeah.
So if I continue to do that, then I'm losing the respect, of
Yeah.
my
And exactly
employees.
what we're talking about. So there's a lot of hard work that has to be done on the organization side to define, and that's really one of the promises inside Believe is, these are the kind of people we're going to work with. So on a daily basis, from a customer standpoint, we're going to surround you with folks like this. And when you define who they are, then you can actually go, that's that's not a good fit. We dragged them in, and now we're dragging them around, and they aren't following any of our processes and making everybody's life horrible. So being able to, it's the exact same thing, and just
Yeah.
you're always protecting the herd. You're always the shepherd, so to speak, making sure that herd is protected, and you're keeping that trust and psychological safety high. Exactly.
I love it.
Yeah. That's where we're at.
That's why I have you on. That's why I had to get you on today,
You're
man. I was
fine.
like, look,
You're fine.
as a lot of the people that listen to us are
Yeah.
entrepreneurs, and business owners. And so, if you guys are listening and you're looking for a solution to know the buy-in, if you guys want to, explore a little bit deeper as to not just internally, but like
Yeah.
relationships externally with your clients, and creating a situation where it's, it's going to be a lot more smooth. The flow is going to be better.
Yeah.
Everybody's going to be excited to come to work. We live in 2024, where everybody's complaining that they can't hire anybody. And it's because people are done with spending 8 hours a day somewhere and not being happy.
Yeah. Done with it.
COVID shined the light on it. You know what I mean? And that's, and if you're not looking to incorporate that into the day-to-day of your organization, you're going to be done.
Or the whole idea is that, or kind of to flip that a little bit, they've defined the kind of workplace they want to go work at, right? So they're a magnet. And what you do is you create a magnet that attracts that. Click, and it clicks together while repelling the ones that don't fit. So you got to do the work over here to define what that means, and then you'll actually retract them. And then that one will pull another one in, and it just ends up. But you got to do that hard work over here. If the work-life balance is remote 40 hours a week, then that's to define that. But if you're a company where you want people to come in, you need to be clear on that shit.
Yeah.
Right? And then
I love that.
Yeah, then you need to be able to measure it.
Yeah. To your point, and I'll bring it to the services that we offer as social media content creators. I think a lot of people only think about social media in terms of sales and marketing, but they're not thinking about how they can attract employees and people to work at the place. I get contacted daily from people that want to work with us in editing and filmmaking and social media management, the whole nine, because they see what the culture is like. You
can't hide it. When it gets right, it gets bright. It just really does.
It gets right. It gets bright. Are these all of these?
That was brand. I was like, wow, that was actually pretty good.
Or these, you should write these down.
We need to.
Waltisms. Hey man, I appreciate that. Let our audience know where they can find you.
So it's just Bite, BITE 7, the number 7.com. Everything you need there. Bite7.com. So,
there you go. Man. And so they'll come in and he'll take you through the process. And I guess there's different ways to work with you, right? Like you guys can do the surveys.
Yep.
There's other ways to work with you, right? Like you go and work with organizations too.
Yeah,
right?
In the Bite world, we call it the full Bite. We have a thing called a concierge service where we have somebody hold your hand all the way through, or you can sort of self-implement and hold your own hand through. So there's all that's at the website. So
okay, cool. And then you're also available for speaking.
Oh yeah, definitely. If you like the Deborah story, if you like the millennial story, I'm probably a pretty good guy to have there. Super passionate about it. That's how we're getting the word out.
Very cool. Uncle Walt, I appreciate your time.
Right. Thank you, Mondo.
And that was Spaghetti on the Wall, ladies and gentlemen, brought to you by Leduc Entertainment. For all of your digital marketing needs, podcasts, customer journey videos, organic social, we got you. And you can watch Spaghetti on the Wall anywhere you're probably listening to it right now. So keep listening, and we'll see y'all next time.